Right, so we have a character walking around here. And what we're going to do now is essentially build the background or the environment. So in our game that we're going to do later, it's going to be a much bigger RPG. For now, we're going to just build out a really basic background. So go to Window, 2D here, and open up a tile palette. I went ahead and docked mine at the bottom here. Now with this assets in the environment folder that they give us, they have these different tile sets, which is like water. Here's like land. What we're looking for is tile set world here. So I'm going to go to sprite mode here. I'm going to change it from single to multiple. And I'm going to go ahead and open up my, well, I'm going to hit apply first. And I'm opening my sprite editor. Now on average, whenever you see something like this, it's usually in a multiple of 2. So what we want to do is go to slice, and we're going to do by grid size, and I'm just going to type in 16 by 16. And you can see that's pretty much the size that they built these out, and most games are set for 16 by 16. So I'm going to go ahead and hit slice here, and now we have water, we have some grass here, we have a couple of trees. Now the way that looks like they have it set up is these are tiled for this specific section, and this could be for a room, like walls for a room and a door, things like that. So I'm going to keep this very, very basic, and maybe we'll do this and this rock. We'll see. Let's see how it goes. Anyway, now that we have it broken up, I'm going to save that, and I'm going to grab this tile set world, and because we broke it up, you can see these are the different little chunks here. And I'm going to grab this, I'm going to drop it into our scene here, and it's prompting me, well, where do you want to save this tile set? Next, I'm going to hit cancel for a second. I'm going to create a new palette here, and I'm going to call this world. And this is just so I have a thing here. I'm going to hit create. And I usually, in the art folder, create another new folder here called TS for tile sets. I'm going to select that folder. And now when I grab this tile set world and I drop it in here, actually, let me hit cancel. You have to make sure that this is also where it says pixels per unit, set to 16 as well. Otherwise, you're going to get some funkiness going on here. And I'm going to hit apply. Now let's do that one more time where I drop it in here, art, tile sets, and I'm just going to name this world TP for tile palette because we're saving off our world tile palette. Oh, you know what? Let me just select folder. I think it's just going to save it as world. There we go. So now you can see here we can select with our brush and paint. So for example, let's say there's water down here. We have to right click in here, go to let's see, UI, and then we do, oh no, it's 2D object, tile map, and we're going to go with rectangular here. And then you want to just duplicate these different tile maps out. So like I'm going to hit Control D there. This tile map is going to be set at 0 because it's the lowest level. And I'm going to name this tile map ground. And then this could be trees. And I'm going to hit Control D here and name this next one objects. Now for the ground, we could say, okay, I'm going to just make a, let's see, maybe our knight does start in a room. So maybe I'll just use this for now. And I'll draw like a big room here. And let me undo that for a second. I can actually grab this and I can drag this out. And here is like a tiled room. We could actually maybe vary it up a little bit here. And actually, I don't even like that at all. And for the edge here, I can grab this. Kind of like for the edge. And then I can grab these 3 here. And I could just, you know, we'll just grab this center one. And just drag this down here. Drop this at the top. This on the corner here. Now you might be wondering, well, why is he doing all of this when he doesn't even have his, let's grab this, where his player is gone. Well, my player, or my knight rather, you can see here is set at origin 0, and my ground is also set at origin 0. So if I take my hero here and I set him to 1 in order layer, you can see I pop him up on the top there. So now he's on top of everything. And let's grab this. I think I should go a little higher there. And then I'm just kind of winging it for now. Okay, so our knight starts off here. And really, even though this is all on the ground layer here, these walls really should be on their own wall layer. So let's go ahead and just quickly erase those. And I'll show you why I want to make that a wall layer. So if I press play right now, you can see my characters walking around. What I want to do is make another layer that's going to go above this. So I'm going to duplicate this, call this walls. And this one will be 1. And I'll make my player character, my knight here, we'll just make him like 10 for now. Just keep him above everything. So here's walls, and same thing as before, just really quick to the end here. Grab this, change that. And we could probably grab this and just, I don't really have a corner piece there. I mean, this thing's kind of cool here. I could just add that up here or something. I don't know. Maybe drop a few of these. It's just building it out. But anyway, so for the walls here, actually those should be part of the ground. But for the walls, what I can do is I can do add, and then I can do tile map collider 2D. And now when I press play, let's see. Yeah, those are the walls. Hopefully there's no ground piece. Let's see. Oh, yeah, you know what? My wall, because I duplicated it. Let me go ahead and erase all that center stuff here under walls here. I'm going to select my eraser and erase the inside stuff. There we go. Yeah, that's why when I was walking, I wasn't able to move. You'll see what I mean in a second. And because I have this on there, anything I add back in will have that collision on it. So let's turn our ground back on. Now when I press play, I should be able to walk around. There we go. And I can't walk out of here. Let's select our main camera for a second. Just kind of play with projection. Just for a second. Like we're going to use we're going to spend a whole chunk of time on that. All right, so anyway, here's our environment. So this is a really basic thing. If you want to, you can zoom out a little bit and play with just adding a bunch of grass, and we can do that with this. And add some stumps. And I'm not on the right layer. Let's make sure that we are on the ground layer here. That's something I tend to kind of mess up fairly often is I'll forget which layer I should be on. Kind of just vary this up. And let's make sure we're on our brush here. And really, we should have a, yeah, we do have a trees. So let's go ahead and add some trees. And let's make sure this is on 3 so that they are above the ground. And maybe we could build a mechanic in the future. And here, so we walk out. And let's just take our camera for now and just have it follow our player. And I shouldn't be able to walk into my trees. So here's my tree, and we should add that tile collider 2D. Now I can't walk into the trees. And really, we just needed a background, and this is a very quick video on how to do that. So I'm going to save this level 01. Feel free to have fun with this and, you know, add some pots under objects here. Make sure this is maybe on 4, maybe, and add some pots. And we're going to get into a little bit more with sort layers in the bigger video. Let's see, tile collider 2D, so we can't walk into them. We could maybe make them, we'll add a trigger and we can make them pickups. Maybe we'll make these things our pickup. I don't know. There might be cooler assets in here. But, ooh, this might be cool. Sorry, I know I want to end this video, but kind of like this. Yeah, maybe I want to add that there. And then Let's see. Just kind of add this. No, I mean, yeah, it looks cool. Whatever. And let's see. Now I can't walk into that, but maybe that's a way I can go into another level once I collect all the pots or do something else or defeat all the enemies. Anyway, that's the basics of environments. And yeah, that's it. All right, so what we're going to do in this video is set up our enemy. So we have these NPCs here. We have a girl, we have a frog. Let's see, old woman, sage. Let's see, hood. I don't know. Let's see, poor kid 1. That's interesting. So let's drag this in there, and let's just create a empty parent. Just call this enemy, because I think this, from what I could see, and let's also make sure that this is 10 here, and so that's on top. And let's make this 10, 10, 10. It looks like it could be some kind of enemy, right? And it looks like this is really just it's got like a flip animation. This thing's flipped. So I like that. So let's just, instead of poor kid 1, I don't like the naming of that. Let's call this enemy underscore art. And this will be the enemies that are going to attack our player. And so what we need is really a, inside of the hood folder, let's create another folder and we'll just call this anims. And this is going to be all the animations for our hood, which really is just these 2 frames. And yeah, so let's select enemy here, or really enemy art here where our sprite renderer is. And let's go to our animation panel. So let's make sure that we dock this here. And should have had that docked like that. That probably would have given us more visuals. And honestly, I think I'm just going to make one single animation here. And well, we might need 2. We'll need an idle. So let's go to art, visuals, characters, non-playable characters, hood, anims. There's our idle. And I'm just going to drag in a single image. I'm going to do the same thing last time where I just make it like 4 frames or something. Hit Control S while I click in here, and then I'm going to create a walk. Save that, and then I'm just going to grab these 2 frames, drop them in here, and I'm going to make my entire animation 2 frames a second. And now when I press play, you can see it just switches between those. And that could kind of double up as a attack or something. So I'll just save that out. And let's see. Let's go to our scripts folder here. And let's create a enemy script here. Now this enemy script really should be like 3 or 4 scripts, but I'm going to just dump all of the logic into a single script. And the reason for that is really, again, just so that we prototype this out, we do, because this, we want to try to build an entire prototype of the game that we're going to expand and make amazing in this class inside of a couple hours, which is pretty remarkable considering, that, you're building an entire game that you could almost publish at this point. So here's enemy, and we have this enemy script. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and do a side-by-side. Right, one other thing that I want to get into before we get into how the script works, the enemy script works, is I kind of made a mistake. And what that is that's in my scaling. If I make this 10 here on the outside and I leave this 1, as we're moving this player around, it's going to be looking at the movement of my player at a character that's 10 times the size. So what we really want to do is on our highest level, our game ups, which is all of our movement script. So this is on the knight player. We're going to go ahead and make this 1. And then on the hero model, which is the actual art, we're going to make this 10. Let's do the same thing for the enemy here. We're going to make that 1 at the top. And then on the enemy art itself, we're going to make that a 10. Like that. Okay, I'm going to save that. All right, so I went ahead and typed out the whole script and I commented everything. And we're going to go through all of it. I'm going to go pretty quickly. You can slow it down or speed it up. But it's actually not that long of a script. And it really just covers a lot of the logic that goes into creating an enemy script. And a lot of this would have been refactored is the term that you want to use. And Like, for example, you'd make an attack script, but I'm just dumping it all into one because we're prototyping. Even at work now, we're starting a new project and they pulled 3 or 4 people off of our team to prototype a game. And it's really what you're seeing here, where we create kind of like the logic, the core logic, some quick scripts, and just some basic gameplay setup so that people can get an idea of what the next game is going to be. All right, so let's start at the top here. If you recall, an array is like a variable in that it has a data type, it has a name, and it has but what's different is these brackets. And what this bracket indicates is, and if we select our enemy, so you can go ahead and just type this line out for now, is it creates this this section here, this little waypoint area. So once you type it out, it's going to look like this. And let's go ahead and get rid of these. Is this locked? Oh, I might have to restart Unity. Unity's been acting a little weird. All right, there we go. It updated. Sometimes if you leave Unity open and you come back to it later, it'll it start to glitch or whatever. But it's a pretty solid program. Probably one of the most solid game engines I've used so far. Anyway, so here's a list of waypoints. And what we're going to do here, and I'm just going to delete this waypoint that I created here, is we're just going to set the target positions of where we want our enemy to follow. So I'm going to right click in here, create empty, and I'm just going to call this WP for waypoint, and I'm going to hit Control D like 4 more times. I'm going to grab these 4 and drop them underneath here. Now, you probably figured out that WP stands for waypoints. And with these waypoints here, I'm going to select all of them, and I'm going to hit W here, and you can see they're located right here. And I want to give them some like a visual indicator because they're just an empty game object. So maybe a pink star, something like, I don't know if that really, we'll just go big here. And then I'm going to select each one and I'm just going to place them where I'd like my character to walk to. And I don't want to be too close to these trees because they have collision on them. But maybe down here and here. And then here's waypoint 4. Maybe I'll put that by the entrance. And we always have this tile palette kind of like hanging out here. So if we need to give ourselves a little bit more space, and this is what's really cool about 2D. 3D, you could do it this way too, especially if you're using Pro Builder. But let's see if I can find my, which one was I using? Was it this? Yeah, it was this. Just kind of add a bunch more here. Area for my character to go to. And you know, what's cool about this is you can, you know, add a couple. We want to make sure we put this under the trees layer. And honestly, even that stuff I just added, bad move on my part. I got to make sure that I'm teaching you guys the right way to do it. So we can add a little bit more here, here. And I really love 2D game development for this. And here's my trees section. Add just a couple more logs here. And these already have collision on them. So, you know, I can say, okay, well, this waypoint 4 here, press W. I want to keep it there because I want to catch my player coming out maybe. Here's waypoint 3, waypoint 2. Give him a little bit more space to stretch his legs. And honestly, in this trees layer, I don't like this tree here. It's in a pretty bad design spot. I might want to put one here so it forces the player to come out and interact with my guy here. So maybe we'll do something like this on the tree layer. Put one here so that it comes out and then they have to come around here and interact with them. I don't know. There's always testing. And then maybe another couple trees here, like a forest. And then we'll offset it so it doesn't look so uniform. And then that's the path to get into the next section. Maybe something like this. And that's our exit there. All right, so we already did art, so I don't want to spend too much time on that. So let's power through the script. So now that we have these waypoints and you have this variable typed in, what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select my enemy. And I'm going to grab these 4. Let's lock this enemy up here for a second so we got access to this. But on the waypoint section, I'm just going to grab these 4 waypoints and just drop them on here. Now, you're going to have to forgive me. I'm like really under the weather. So just trying to make sure you guys get all the good stuff. Anyway, so we have these waypoints here and they're of type transform. So what we're really storing is the position, rotation, and scale, all this information for each one of these so that we can tell our enemy later where to go, which is this guy right here. And
So we have a bunch of these other variables. I've commented them out so you could read through them if you want to power through and just type this and then fast forward. But this is the speed in which my player moves, the speed in which my enemy will chase after the player. How far do we want to be able to detect when our enemy is in range or our player is in range? We need to get the transform of our player. So what you're going to do is after you type this out, you're going to grab your knight and you're going to drop it inside of here. And that way we're going to be using all of the detection range and all this stuff to detect. This is a huge one right here, detection range, because really everything this enemy does is based on the position of this player here. Attack range, probably figured that out, how far we are from the enemy, the player before we attack. Attack cooldown, last attack time, waypoint index. Now this is used because each one of these, you could see element 0, 1, 2, and 3. It has an index, which is the slot that it's in. And the slot that this one is in, it starts at 0. So we have to set our waypoint index to 0. And then later on, all we do is we add 1 to this, which I'll show you where that code is. It's probably more towards, I think I put it to the bottom, yeah. So this sets, we update our index by adding 1 to it, and then we divide it by the length. And the reason for this, and then we get a remainder. And this gives us, by having the remainder, it gives us the whole number. All right, so let's go back to the top here. And I'll get into that, how the modulus operator and remainder works. So we have and then this is a reference to our animator. And so because our enemy here, let's unlock this for a second. The animator component of our enemy, which is what controls all of the animations, is actually on the child, the art one. And we need to have it here because we need to access this sprite render here when we animate. What we're saying here is we're saying animator equals get component in children animator. I know we covered this in the player. And then I'm going to call right off the bat this method called find nearest waypoint. Now let's jump down there and take a look at, and what I'm going to do is just kind of, well, we'll get into find nearest waypoint in a second. So let's go down to update. So I'm going to click this little arrow here to collapse it. So we just kind of keep cleaning, going through each section. Now the code is really easy to understand, and we're using a lot of pre-made code from Unity here. So I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. Hopefully that's not too small. And let's move that over a little bit here. Now the distance to player variable here, that's a local variable, all it's storing is 2 parameters. This is a pre-made script by Unity, and it really deals with vector 2, which is, remember we talked about this, the X and the Y axis, or X and Z, the 2 axes. And all it's storing is what is the distance between the enemy's position and the player's position. That's it. And we're storing it in this variable. And if that distance between our enemy, which is this script is attached to, and the player, right? So if the distance to the player is less than or equal to the detection range, and we made this a public variable so we could adjust this, because if you make it too big, he'll just start chasing, every enemy will chase him on the map, regardless of where he is in the universe. If it's less than or equal to, we're going to say the enemy right now is in a state called chasing, because the distance to the player is less than or equal to the detection range, which means he's in range. And then we're going to call this method called chase player. If this is not true, which means our player is not in range of our enemy, then we just want our enemy here to keep walking around the waypoints. So we say if is chasing, that means if the player is out of range, stop chasing and return to patrol, right? So is chasing, we set it to false because the player is not in range, and we just go to find the nearest waypoint. And find the nearest waypoint, we'll get into that script in a second, but really it's just helping our player find our enemy find the nearest waypoint and walk around. And we could really expand these to how many we want. Like I can go put another one down here, and maybe our enemy will never get there, but this is such a small area that it might, and you can just kind of cover it. And what's nice about this is you can actually just duplicate this enemy character and give them the same waypoints, and they'll all kind of move, and you can adjust the range. And I'll show you that in a bit. So it's kind of a neat little logic for creating some artificial intelligence. Now here's the thing. If our enemy here is not chasing, right? And remember, this is checking if it's chasing. If our player is not chasing, we want it to first find the nearest waypoint, and then we want to call this patrol script. Now this animator here, I'm not going to set up the animation just yet because I really want to just get this core logic of moving. But this is really used to, we go inside the animator component, which is here. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up some parameters in here, is attack and is moving. And right now we don't have any of this stuff working, so don't worry too much about it. And honestly, I might just go in here and just delete these. And I know it's used for this transition here, but let me go ahead and delete these out. Well, let me leave them. Well, here, I'm going to start with a fresh one here because I want to make sure that you guys fully understand the animator. But for now, let's just focus on this. But really all this is checking is it's saying animator.setBool. This thing is moving, and we'll get into this later. And if all of that is correct, we actually, like this line of code is what's going to set our animation to walk. Okay, so let's go back up here a second. I don't want to confuse you. But we keep calling this a couple of these methods. And again, we're not that far down, and we're almost done with the whole script. So as you type this out, go back and recomment this yourself. But this chase player method that we call here is actually pretty simple too. And let me go ahead and just kind of plop this on another line. Maybe plop. Well, let me plop this. Here, let me undo this. Where's that at? Sorry, I kind of lost my way. Where is it? Chasing player. Here we go. I'm going to plop this chunk on another line so you could see it. Maybe that. Okay. So we have our current enemy's position. That's all. When you write transform.position, it's referencing the current position. Now, inside that vector2 class, we have another method called move towards. You probably guessed it. All it does is it moves our enemy towards something. Here, we want to move the enemy towards the player using the chase speed, because remember, we're in the chase player here. So we have the enemy's current position, we have the player's position, and then how fast do we want him to chase it? That's it. And we have a variable up top that we created called chase speed, and I set that to 4. And what's neat is you really could make speed and chase speed the same, but it's nice to see your enemy run faster than they walk, like if they have a leisurely walk around. So let's actually see that in action. If I kind of move this over, you see how he's kind of leisurely walking? But in my game view here, if I walk down, and I don't know if I did this in the last video, forgive me, but I just grabbed the main camera and I dropped it on top. But now you can see how fast he started chasing after me? And if I get away, watch what happens over here. He goes back to his detection range. Oh, he got caught on the tree. And that's what I mean, like, we got to be very careful with the way we set some of this stuff up. He got stuck on that tree. We're going to, in future games, even some of the 3D ones, we're going to have a lot more advanced logic. And, excuse me, we're going to have a lot more advanced logic in the way we do our games. There we go. He won't get caught there. And what I mean by that is we'll be using some really cool AI stuff. But for now, I want to get some basics done. Anyway, back to chase player here. Pretty easy to understand. We're going to move our enemy towards the player to chase him. If the distance to the player is less than or equal to the attack range, so we're going to check if the enemy is close enough to attack and if the attack cooldown has passed. Now, I added an attack cooldown. This isn't necessary, but you don't want your character just hammering your player. You want him to attack and then just kind of wait a little bit, relax, and then come back at him again. So it gives this idea that your enemy has like a little bit of like thinking and feeling, and it gets tired too. And what we're doing here is we're just calling this attack player method, which really doesn't have much in there. It's just going to play an animation. The reason I left this kind of sparse is because we want to be able to play with health bars and stuff, like knock down our player's health if he gets touched by this enemy. But just overall, if the distance to the player is less than or equal to the attack range, that means he's in distance to the enemy. And the time since they last fought is there, we'll call attack player. And that's this. We have a debug.log, and we're going to add some triggers and stuff, and we'll get this stuff going. So we'll trigger the attack animation, and then we reset the time between attacks. And we're really almost there. The patrol is pretty simple, same as the other one. If our waypoint.length is the same as 0, which means we did not set any waypoints here. So if I go back to my enemy here, if this is 0 and we did not set any waypoints up, we're going to jump out of this method. Otherwise, we're going to move our position towards the current waypoint. So the current position to the current waypoint, and then here's the speed in which we move between waypoints. That's all this line. We've seen this like same exact code twice up top. And then we're going to check if the enemy has reached the current waypoint. If the distance between our enemy's current position is the same as the position of our waypoint, and this little is less than 0.1f, that's just kind of a little bit between how far we are from there. We're just checking, like, if it's less than 0.1f, that means we're there. We're going to go ahead and increment the waypoint here. So I know you know basic math, but I wanted to show you this visually. So here's like this little waypoint calculator, right? So forgive me for all the ads and stuff that are on here. All right, so let's bring this down a little bit so you can see this. Okay, so waypoint index, which is right here. It's this. We start out at 0, right? And what we're doing is we're going to update the waypoint index. Remember, we have 0, 1, 2, 3, or we have 1, 2, 3, 4 elements, but we have the index is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to set this waypoint index to 0 so that it loops between the number of waypoints. This is called the modulus operator. And what it does is it gives us the remainder. So let's say our waypoint index, right, is set to 2 or set to 1. And we divide that by 5, which is the current number 1, 2, 3. Oh, well, it's set to 4. But if we do 5 here, we can add that fifth waypoint index that we just did. It'll say, notice that the remainder is 1, because the remainder is what this modulus operator gives us. So if our current waypoint index is 0 plus 1, which is 1, divided by 5, it gives us 1, or it gives us 1. And so it knows to go to 1 next. So let's say we're at 1 and we change this to 2. It gives us 2. Same thing with 3. Same thing with 4. It's just giving us the remainder, which is... And now if I go to 5 here, you'll notice that 5 divided by 5 is 0. And what that does is that resets the position back to index 0 here. So that allows here, that's what's allowing our little enemy here it's doing 1. It's looking for index 2, which is this one here. And we could mix these up and it'll actually go here and there. Oh, but we're also looking at the distance. There we go. And here's 5. And now it's going to go all the way back to the first one, which is 0. Okay, that tree wasn't so bad. And now when we come down here, if we're in distance, he chases after us. My guy's a little bit quicker than the enemy here. All right, and let's do this. This is pretty much the last method here is the find nearest waypoint. And if you need to watch this video twice, I know it's a little long, and sometimes it's easier when you see me typing out the code. Whatever is your learning style is best. But here's this method called find nearest waypoint. We made 2 local variables. One is just saying the closest distance, math.f.infinity, just means we're going to be casting into infinity in all these different directions, like kind of like a ray almost, right? Or we're storing a value that we're going to use that just goes into infinity. So it's like the largest possible distance we're going to store. Store the index of the closest waypoint. It's just 0 now, but we update it down here. Now, I think we've done loops before, but just briefly, a for loop is just a way of looping through a bunch of code. And a for loop has some parameters here. The first parameter is just creating a variable. And this is just creating a variable called I that's an integer that's storing 0. As long as 0 is less than the length of our waypoints, which right now is set to essentially 5, we're going to increment this by 1. So what it does is it starts off at 0 here, and then once it finishes this code, then it fires this part off here where it increments it to 1. So what we're saying here is distance, and we're familiar with distance at this point. The distance between our enemy's position and the waypoint at 0, right, because we're starting at 0, is being stored here. If the distance between our enemy and that waypoint is less than the closest distance, we're going to take our closest distance here and set it to the distance of our waypoint. And then we're going to take the closest index, which is being used here, right? It's being used up here. And we increment this by 1. And down here, all we do is increment our waypoint to 1. So this is going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then back to 0. So this is just looping through. All this is doing is just finding the nearest waypoint. That's it. It doesn't actually use the logic yet. And so we kind of broke this all down into patrol. And, and like I said, the code itself is really easy, really basic math, but it's not a lot of code, but it's the logic you might have to go through again. So go ahead and type it out, get it working, come back to it again and use it on another enemy. And and sorry if I'm being redundant, but one of the best things you can do when it comes to coding or engineering anything is make sure that you kind of understand how to read code. And the more you script, the logic will come to you. Anyway, that's it for the enemy patrol script.